everybody, and welcome to another great episode of my EdTech Life. Thank you so much for joining us on this wonderful day. And wherever it is you're joining us from around the world, thank you as always for all of your support. As always, we appreciate all the likes, the shares, the follows. Thank you so much for engaging with our content, resharing our content, and reaching out to us because of the content. And again, all of this wouldn't be possible if it wasn't for our amazing sponsors. Thank you so much to Book Creator, Andrew Wade, and Peel Back Education for believing in our mission to bring these amazing conversations and amazing guests to tell us and talk to us about the work that they're doing within the EdTech space. And today I am really excited for our guest who is joining us today, and his name is Caleb Hurd. Caleb, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me on.
Excellent. Well, Caleb, thank you so much for reaching out, via email. And I know that we've connected on LinkedIn. So I'm just really excited to talk a little bit more about Chatperone. And I mean, this is something that is very exciting. And as I dove in and reading some of the blogs and, the info that you have on your website, this really got me excited. So I'm thankful that you are here. Thank you for accepting the invite. And I'm just really excited to get going on our conversation today. So Caleb, for our audience members who may not be familiar with your work just yet, can you give us a little brief introduction at what your context is within the EdTech space?
Sure, absolutely. So, um, it's good to meet all your audience members. My name's Caleb Hurd. I've been working on and launched a product called Chatperone, and so it's like a chaperone but for chatting. So Chatperone, and what it is, I'll go ahead and give you sort of the story that formed it because that will explain sort of what it does as well. Um, I have two very bright kids. I've been working in the tech space for 20 years, and I have an 8-year-old and a 12-year-old, and they're very curious and they're very tech savvy, a little more tech savvy than me, which is embarrassing because it's what I do for a living. Um, but I started going through and started paying attention to how they were interacting with ChatGPT and other AI chatbots. And I started reading news articles about some interactions that, had bad outcomes. And I didn't want my kids to kind of go down that path. And so I actually built a tool just for myself. It wasn't intended to be something that I launched to public because I found that there were no really good parental controls in place for chatbots. And there were some really basic ones, but there weren't any controls that would bring the chatbot down to the level of the child talking to it. They really aren't following COPPA compliance where they're getting consent from the parents for certain interactions and data, et cetera. And there also, I think most crucially, there weren't any alerts that were letting parents know, hey, your child just had this conversation. They had a tough time with some kids at school. Maybe you should talk to them about that. So parents are kind of left in the dark, and it's sort of like the internet launching, where it's new and exciting to some, it's scary and frustrating to others. But kids just sort of slip through the cracks, even though they're a primary consumer of these new services. So I built this for my kids and I let them play with it and they loved it. And they had independence and access to a tool that, I even made like a homework mode so that it would not give them the answers. It would walk them through how to solve problems and kind of teach them along the way. Um, and as I sort of built this for myself and my own kids, I started talking to other parents and realizing that this is something that many parents wanted access to. So that's what Chatperone was born out of. I'm currently working on an education version as well, because there's also very similar challenges in the educational teacher space. I'm really laser focused on safety for children. I don't want to, it's very easy in this kind of burgeoning space to lose your focus. And I'm really focused on making sure that these interactions are safe and educational and useful, and that the authorities in kids' lives, such as teachers and parents, can appropriately get involved in sort of guiding them through and making it a useful technology. Because this is a technology that, whether we like it or not, it's part of the workforce already. Like, it's already kind of arrived. And our responsibility is to prepare these children to be successful in the workplace, and they're going to be using these tools. And so I want them to have a good, positive experience where the tool doesn't kind of dumb them down by, giving them the answers and make them not exercise their minds and arriving at the answer. And I also don't want them to create unhealthy attachments or get exposed to information that they really shouldn't be at the appropriate age level. So that's the space that I'm really focused on. And I know that's a very long intro, but I would just end it by saying, it's just me. I built it from scratch, and there's no VCs, there's no investors involved. I don't have to worry about, how are we going to monetize children's information? I really answer just strictly to the parents that use the tool, and in the future, the schools and teachers that use the tool. And I really like it that way because I don't have to worry about, feeding their data back or trying to figure out how to, maximize profits. I really can just focus on what I'm concerned about, which is health of children.
That is fantastic. I mean, there's definitely a lot to unpack there within that answer, but definitely, being a founder in one of the most emotionally charged spaces in tech, we're talking about child safety. And I mean, even from last year, coming in October, I think very famous cases, happening with character AI and many more, that we heard a lot of students going through some rough times, building those parasocial relationships and falling into just depression and falling into so many things due to the chatbots, the answers that they're getting, the relationships that are being formed. So talk about an emotionally charged space here. And, many times founders really are just chasing those enterprise contracts. They want those school district contracts, but you flipped it. You did it in reverse in the way that you're explaining this to me and explaining it to our audience who's listening, that you went to the parents first or straight to the parents. So I want to ask you, being a founder, and of course, this being an EdTech podcast where, we talk a lot of things that tie into schools and technology and so on, but you flipping it and going straight to the parents, what was the first reaction from many people around you since you've been in the tech space for 20 years? What were their initial reactions to your vision? And was there anybody maybe questioning or maybe talking you out of it and being like, no, we got to go to the schools first?
Yeah, it's a really great question. I don't think it's an exclusive question, right? I think that this is something that should be solved both at schools and in the household simultaneously, because the reality of the matter is, like, kids are using this technology already. It's already, being used to answer homework questions, write papers. It's already being used to in the education space, just sort of hidden and behind the scenes, and it's happening at home. And so it's that classic problem where parents and teachers really have to come together and align on how they're going to manage exposing children to this technology, and managing this technology. And you really can't solve it, in my opinion, in one space or the other. It really has to be solved in both. And I think if you have a platform that starts off focused on parents, and I chose that area primarily because I am a parent, right? Because I built it to solve my own problems. And if you start there, you can kind of work your way backwards towards tools that teachers need in order to deal with this sort of technology. Probably the biggest tool that I see in the future, and there's a lot of great tools in the space already that are focused in schools. I'm trying not to, build a bot that will educate kids directly or do any of these things. Nothing wrong with those solutions. I think they're phenomenal. And I think that space is growing with some really great players in it. But I really wanted something that, whether you're a teacher or a parent, if you are exposing a child, and I use the word child, youth is probably the better word. If you're exposing a teenager or a young kid to this technology, I want you to use a platform that they're going to be safe with, that is not going to hallucinate and forget that it's talking to a child. I reinforce, not to get too geeky, but every 20th message, I'm sending a reinforcement reminder to the system, the age of the child, how to conduct itself, not to touch on certain topics. There's customizations in the tool as well, so that if you're a school that, um, wants to focus on a particular worldview, or you want to avoid a certain topic because it's sensitive to your school and you want to teach it in the classroom, you can go in and add that custom filter, and that chatbot will avoid that topic, or it'll approach it the way that you prefer. So my point is that there's a peace of mind of like, a child is interacting with a tool, working on homework. Is the child going to be safe? Is it going to be a healthy conversation? Is it going to be in the spirit and the voice of that particular educator or that school that they want it to be in? And back to your original question, though, of the two, separate spaces, the parents and the teachers. I think they both interlock, but I also think they've got to be solved independently as well.
Excellent. Yeah, no, for sure. Definitely. And there's a lot definitely to unpack there too, as well as we started talking about. Most importantly, is just that interaction, that human interaction with the technology. And, it's already 2026, I can't believe it's already going to be March soon. So this year is already taking off real quick. And since 2022, there's been so many things that have occurred, not only in the just AI in general space, generative AI in the business enterprise, but also in education. And obviously with, these devices, cell phones and iPads and so on being made available to our youth, and then them having access to these two platforms, maybe that are definitely not guardrailed or protected, for child use, where like we were talking a little bit earlier about some of those cases that we heard about
Yeah.
last year and all those things that are happening. So I want to ask you, as someone who myself who's been studying this space, as a matter of fact, my whole dissertation was based on interviews from 2022 and learning so much from users all around the world. Many times the EdTech industry has a history of making promises where they, make big promises to families, but underdeliver. So I want to ask you, as a parent as well, and coming up with a platform like this, how do you go about building that trust with your users, the parents that are concerned about their students accessing questionable AI platforms?
Yeah, it's such a great question. Um, so I think the short answer, or maybe the medium answer to that question, is I equip parents with the same tools I need to manage, my children. I don't have time to read every single conversation that they have. I don't have time to sort of police, everything that's happening. And even if I did have time, there's not a sense of independence that the child has or the youth has in interacting with the system. And so, in order for, especially my 12-year-old as an example, to give her the most sense of independence by monitoring the conversations and by having it alert me just on the things that really matter, that I need to dig in and kind of understand. And there's different levels of alerts too. So it's like, if I don't feel like, going after the moderate alerts that are really kind of informational, hey, you might want to talk to your kid. They seemed a little bit sad about this particular topic. And then there's ones that are more severe. It's like, you really should have a conversation with your kid. um, by giving them those tools, it's less about them trusting the platform, although that's important too. And it's more about giving them the tools to trust themselves to parent their kids and be involved in those conversations. And I try to give as much support in that process as possible. So not only am I sending, a message saying, hey, um, your child had a conversation that might be bullying related. And it seems kind of serious. Here's some supporting information that you can read about how to navigate a conversation with your child about bullying. So, um, I guess the first thing is I'm a parent, so I would only build a platform in a way that would mean my own children's. I mean, they're power users, right? So from a safety perspective, I have confidence from that side. But on the other side, I'm really giving the parents tools to read every conversation if they want, to monitor the ones that matter. So the confidence really comes from the parent being equipped to ultimately be the one to raise that child and have all the information that they need available to do that.
That is fantastic. And, I think that's one thing that really, from what I'm hearing, and especially you coming on the show and as a parent building, as we know, I think many of the things and maybe even some of the concerns too can be that there's a version of child safety that turns into surveillance and control, but it's disguised as protection. So, and I understand, especially with many platforms that are out there that are being used, but I really love where you're coming from on this, where this is something like, I'm giving to my own children and the way that you are supporting them and also the way that the platform is helping you as well to be able to see and or if there are any concerns, if there are any alarms, any types of specific conversations that should be had, and again, just having those things and having the platform alert you to make sure that as a parent, you can still have those crucial conversations with your children and, letting them know and, showing them what is right, what is wrong, how to interact with the platforms and with generative AI altogether. And I think that's something that is very well needed. And I think it should be, like you said, it's like a partnership within,
Yeah.
you have the home, you have a district also as well, and building that up. So I guess, also in seeing how big tech, we know that Google's, we know the Microsofts, we know that they have the resources to build in child safety, but they either just keep getting it wrong because they may be focusing on the wrong thing. So I want to ask you, what are some of the things that they may be focusing on that are helping you get things right? Because from what it seems and what I'm seeing in the website itself, you really thought this through. So what do you see since you've been in the tech space for
Yeah.
20 years? What is it that they're missing out on that you are getting right?
Behind every classroom door, there's a story of patience, creativity, and the quiet power of shaping the next generation. Peel Back Education shines a light on these lived experiences, the real voices of educators on the front lines. Don't just subscribe to Real Voices, discover them, connect with them, and maybe even share your own too. Visit peelbackeducation.com to discover the stories shaping education and the people just like you living them every day.
Yeah, it's a great question. Um, so random fact, you were talking about big tech. I'll talk about tiny tech here for a moment. So I was actually Elf on the Shelf's first software engineer hire. So I was the first technologist that was hired by Elf on the Shelf, if you're familiar with that brand. And so I spent a lot of time learning about COPPA, Child Online Privacy Protection Act. I know that there's FERPA for the education system, which is very similar as well when it comes to protecting kids' information. And I think more than anything, at Elf on the Shelf, I got exposed to a family focused, family first company. And even though it was a for profit, their goal really was family moments and creating those memories. And I realized one, I picked up the technical skills needed to handle children's information correctly and sort of from the ground up. And two, um, I learned that you can be a for profit, but also put group that you're serving before your profits. And so when I launched this company, that really I wanted to capture that same heart that I sort of got exposed to at that company and learn the use the skill sets that I picked up as well in that very kind of niche particular space. As far as what large companies are doing wrong, that is helping me kind of fill this area. Um, I would love I would love for my company to fail spectacularly because the large entities out there get it right. Like it would be delightful for me to wake up one day and realize that OpenAI or Microsoft went to my website, saw all my controls, ripped them right off, and put them in there. It's like I would shut my company down with a smile on my face and go about my business because um, the unfortunate truth is that they are treating, and Character AI made this very clear last year, they are treating under 18-year-olds as future customers. Like everybody's saying, oh, you got to be 18 to use a platform, but they all know that the kid is just going to click through and 2 seconds later, they're accessing a system that's not designed for them. And this isn't an accident, in my opinion. I don't sit in those meetings. I don't know for sure, but I can't imagine that it's an accident that this is the way that these massive multi-billion-dollar companies have designed this. And that's because if they can get your 15-year-old to use their product exclusively today, when that 15-year-old becomes an adult and they're a paying customer, they're hooked already on your product, and maybe not in a healthy way. And so it feels to me like it's intentional. Unfortunately, these things take time to sort through. And, like I said, I hope that they correct the lack of parental controls, alerting, and the thoughtfulness in the process of involving parents and children interacting with this technology. But, the reality of the matter is when you're owned by investors and you're answering to a board of directors, that often gets put down on the priority list, safety for users. And to sort of give you an idea of the intentionality behind building this tool, I don't actually own any of the data. I very intentionally in the contract, you can go on Chatperone and read the contract during the sign-up process. I intentionally make sure that all the data owned by users is owned by them and not by me. So even if I do sell the company in the future or something happens, I win the lottery and move on with life or whatever, I'm just using that as an example rather than the proverbial bus. My predecessor still can't take that data and do anything that would be harmful to the child, because at the end of the day, I've intentionally made sure that the platform is built legally and technically so that it protects the child in that situation. And I've been talking about parents a lot, but educators as well. You don't want to be in the news because you told your students to go use an AI bot, and either there was a bad experience with that, or that company decided to go resell your information or use it for training or do many of the things that you can do, or market to the kid in some way or sell that data to marketers to market to the child. So like I keep talking about parents, but these problems also apply to schools in almost an identical way. And having a safe platform that all this can happen on in a way that you feel comfortable and also that you own the data and can access the data and see everything if it's there, I think it's absolutely important. Do I think any of these large corporations are going to plug these holes anytime soon? I doubt it, because unfortunately, money is king when it comes to this. Profits are king. So yeah, I don't know if that was an answer to your question.
No, that's fantastic. But I was going to add too, I always say now, like data is the new currency. So data is king now too, as well.
That's right.
And that's one of the
I
things,
agree.
going through my studies, probably like in 2023, I think in March, that's when I really started getting to research AI and so on. And then of course I fell into the term data rentiership, which is when I started analyzing that and seeing and thinking to myself as a digital learning coordinator at a school district, and the amount of platforms that are free, to use, I'm thinking to myself, it's like, well, they've got to be making their money somehow. And then, of course, there we go. We start seeing, how the data itself becomes that currency, and they start using that data. And so I really do appreciate the transparency as far as what you said with Chaperone, as far as the way that the user is the owner of that data, because even now with so much technology and so many platforms that are coming in to school districts, I want to say like usually like on a monthly basis and then on a yearly basis. And then of course, more apps start coming along. For the most part, a lot of CTOs are not informed of that. They've got the initials like COPPA, FERPA, and all of that good stuff. But in the fine print, some of these platforms, the data is not even stored in the US. It's stored,
Right.
elsewhere. And so those are the things that I always caution PTOs about, any directors about, to please make sure you read the fine print, especially on that data component, because as we know, he who controls the data can control so many things too as well. And of course, we're talking about profit, we're talking about data and how data can be the new currency now. So thank you so much for sharing that. And thank you also as well for being very transparent as far as the way that you have set up your platform, Chaperone. So like you mentioned, the day that you do win the lottery, you do just walk away, everything is going to be okay and the data is still going to belong to the user. So that's something that is fantastic. So I kind of want to talk a little bit more too, as far as I want to talk more about schools now. Now, for myself, being in education now going on 20 years, one of the main things is when we talk about learning communities and we talk about those things within a school district, oftentimes we think soup, mid-level directors, coordinators, teachers, and then students. But one piece that we often forget about is the parents. And this is something like I talked to you earlier in the very beginning that I mentioned. This needs to be kind of a partnership where we need to include parents into or include them in these important conversations and decisions that are being made at districts as well. So I want to ask you, based on me talking a lot to teachers and parents as well, and how they wish they had more of a bigger, partnership in that sense, from where you sit, what has the conversation been like, maybe at some school that you visited or some schools that maybe you're currently working with and with parents about AI and what's going on with it?
Howdy, y'all. It's Farmer Fobbs from Book Creator. Now listen up, partner. If you're wrangling lesson plans and trying to keep your students engaged, I got just the tool for you. Now remember, every student and teacher deserves a yeehaw moment, and Book Creator can give you just that. Book Creator makes it easy to get your students creating, collaborating, and sharing their ideas all in one place. Book Creator turns any classroom into a digital frontier, whether it's interactive notebooks, portfolios, or good old storytelling. Now, did I tell you it plays nice with all the other favorite apps? Egg Smash It, App Smash It with Adobe, Google, and much more to take creativity to greener pastures. So saddle up and give it a try. Use promo code MyEdTechLife for a 3-month special treat.
Yeah, it's a really great question. I joined the AI governance board at my school, and I'm going to use a conversation that happened in that context to answer that question, because I thought it was extremely revealing. And I had one reaction to it when the conversation happened 6 or so months ago, and now I have a different reaction to it. But we were talking about AI, and the first answer to your question was, I realized very quickly in the room that had teachers and had parents and had students all as part of this advisory board, I realized that the parents that were mostly tech workers, we knew what AI was and how it worked from an industry perspective. The teachers in the room, really, some of them had never used it, and there seems to be a lot there seemed to be hesitation in that room. I wouldn't say hostility in that particular conversation, but I've picked up on that in other conversations where there's a lot of resistance to it. And I actually agree with a lot of the resistance, by the way. I think that much like when iPads first inundated the education system, there were a lot of unintended consequences. And I think there were teachers that were saying, hey, this is not going to be a great outcome. And in retrospect, they were right. Right. And I think in a lot of ways, some of the same concerns they expressed then are now being expressed about AI. And I think that there's a lot of legitimacy in those concerns, which is why I think solutions that are limited, tailored, and intentional in the school system are so critical. But I also, so the first thing that I did in that, I worked with some of the other parents, and we actually presented, like, this is kind of what AI is. This is how it works. It's basically autocomplete on your phone, but instead of just suggesting the next word, it's suggesting the next paragraph, right? and it's trained instead of on millions of single messages, it's trained on the internet. Like that's sort of it in a nutshell. And um, by educating the teachers on what it was, they started to understand what its weaknesses are. It's a psychophant. It will validate you no matter what. And the reason for that is because it's being trained by billions of users interacting with it, and they love to be validated rather than given the correct information. And so it has turned, AI into a psychophant in a lot of cases. And it will lead you down a road where it's confidently wrong, and you'll just be along for the journey unless you are an expert or have critical thinking to sort of kind of pick at it and be like, are you sure you're right? And hallucinations and other things that are weaknesses of the system. But I think the thing that surprised me the most in that conversation didn't come from the educators in the room. I think what surprised me most in that conversation was that the students in the room were actually afraid of AI, and they were actively afraid of the uncertainty of their future career prospects, because they had questions like, am I even going to have a job? Like, what's going to happen to junior level roles once I get into the real world? Are they going to exist anymore? Like, what is this technology going to do to the student community, as a whole? And it actually led me down a path of looking at the last 100 years of newspaper headlines saying, people are going to be automated away by machinery, going back to the 1900s. Like, this has been an ongoing headline for a long, long time in a lot of different categories. And people that say like, oh, but this is different. AI is different. It's going to impact many industries simultaneously. The reality of the matter is that it is going to impact industries, but industries also are going to arise. And the people that do succeed in the workforce in the future are the same as the people that learned how to use computers when the PC hit. They're the same group of people that learned how to use the internet when the internet became popularized. It's just another tool in a long set of tools that extends humanity and what we're capable of doing. And so even though I agree with the trepidation that I sense from students, from teachers, from the education world, I think that there is a middle ground where we learn how to use this technology safely so that children aren't being hurt. We use it safely so that kids continue to be educated rather than kind of, robbed of their ability to think. And I think that those solutions, Chatperone's just one of them, right? I think those solutions are emerging and will continue to emerge. And I think at the end of the day, as long as the child is the center of the solution, and then you grow out to the next authority figures of that child, the parents and the teachers, and then you move into features that administration and others want to manage it. A lot of companies are doing it the opposite way. They're sitting down with those people that write checks. There's nothing wrong with them. They're phenomenal people. I'm sure a lot of them are listening now. We love you. But when you design a piece of software with that person first, you're going to get a lot of administrative functions that will fit the school system. You won't necessarily get what's best for the very last person on the rung, which is the child, the youth that's interacting with that technology. And I think those solutions should be built upside down.
Excellent. Yes, I love everything that you said there. I mean, it really falls in line with the very beginning, of our conversation and just with your introduction, and the way that you see things. And I think that your perspective, your lens, and has been very helpful and has been something that has been essential to build what you have built through Chatperone and, of course, your mission. And so I want to ask you a little bit about that, as far as the product philosophy and the mission, because one of the things that catches my eye is the following. I go to chatperone.com, and we'll make sure we link that in the show notes so everybody can check that out. But right away in the very front, it'll say AI chat for kids, comma, and then it says peace of mind for parents. Now, as we know, most products in this space often lead with fear-based marketing. They talk about yes, the predators, the dangers, the worst case scenarios, but you lead it with peace of mind and empowerment per se for parents. So I want to ask you, was that something that was a deliberate strategic choice? And really, what does that say about you as well? Because like you just told us, no, as a parent, you built something like this because you saw the need for your kids. So tell me a little bit about that, the product, the philosophy behind your product.
Yeah, I think it ties in with my previous answer, right? Which is that um, just like those previous technologies, the internet, the PC, and social media and other technologies that have been introduced, there is sort of this um, healthy middle ground. Maybe not with social media. I'm going to put that one aside, but these other technologies, there's a middle ground where um, all of the promises that big tech is making, hey, it's gonna do your laundry in a year, whatever their big promises are likely. That's one extreme, and they sort of have blinders on about the negative impacts to people, the negative impacts to children. And then on the other extreme, people that haven't yet adopted the technology or played with it or understood it, that kind of don't want things to change. I think that because there's going to be a middle ground where this technology evolves in a way that is useful and safe and hopefully doesn't damage people that are using it. Um, if that's the reality of the future, that's where we're headed, then we should find positive and engaging ways to make it safe, right? If the internet is coming, let's find ways to regulate it and manage it and put guardrails around it in a way that is safe for the users that interact with it. So, peace of mind for parents. I feel like, again, if I was venture capitalist backed, and I said things like, the users are going to own their own data. We're never going to take advantage of that data and try to make money off of it. Or we're going to focus not on fear-based marketing. We're going to focus on positive messaging, positive marketing, peace of mind for parents, peace of mind for teachers. They would not be happy because those are very effective ways to make a lot of money. And I didn't build this to make a lot of money. I really built it to be impactful and effective. And so I intentionally choose that positive messaging because I truly believe that this technology we can thread the needle and do it right. And I truly believe that. And so that's the messaging that flows out of that is really just an outcome of that worldview.
I love it. That is great. Thank you so much for sharing that and sharing just so much insight today, Caleb. And again, I'm just really excited that there are wonderful people such as yourself, the founders, creators that really have that, child first approach in shaping the products and, making those connections. And especially like for me, just peace of mind for parents. And now I'm not a parent myself, but I know that when having conversations with various parents, not only from my school district, but other school districts around, and then just in social media spaces, the importance and that this topic is for them. And many of them just find themselves at a loss for words because they're not sure what to do. They just feel lost. And of course, with so much tech that is out there, so much information already, and then for them to navigate that space and just find something that is going to be good and solid and really has a great heart for the mission. I think that something like Chaperone would be something that would be fantastic for them to really look into and to learn more. But before now that we kind of wrapping up our conversation, I have like two final questions that I do want to ask you, and that might be a little bit more deep, maybe one not so deep, but just and based on everything that you were talking about, I want to ask you, what is the single most important thing that every parent, every educator, and every policymaker needs to understand about this current moment in time that we're living in right now before it's too late to get it right? What can we do now to make sure that we're on the right track and making sure that we're taking care of our youth during this time when so many platforms can definitely, cause harm for them, through social media, through deep fake, and just being used unethically and irresponsibly. What can we do?
Yeah, I think again, you with the great questions. You come with some phenomenal questions. I love them. I'm gonna give a two-part answer. One that is focused on the regulatory side of it, and then I'm gonna give an answer that's focused on the teacher and parent experience, right? So on the regulatory side, I think the biggest thing is these companies are trying to make an end run, as they always do, for maximizing profits. And really, the only check and balance that can not stop that progress. It's good progress. It doesn't necessarily need to be stopped, but slow it down so that we don't hurt people along the way. Is our regulatory bodies, and so I think on the governmental and business side of it, um, they need to catch rules such as COPPA and FERPA. They need to catch these rules up to the latest technologies and tools that children are interacting with. And they need to protect them from outcomes like what happened with character AI, where there were unintended consequences. I mean, if you sent the developers of character AI down and said, like, did you intend for this to happen? Of course they're going to say, no, of course not. I mean, these are humans. They're have kids of their own, I'm sure. Like, they're good people, but there was nobody that slowed them down and said, "Hey, let's think through the implications of what we're building and some of the potential outcomes that could happen from that." And so, I think from a regulatory perspective, I think it's an ideal time. Everybody says Congress is dysfunctional. I would like to think that children and their safety may be one of the only topics that maybe brings Congress together to agree that we should protect this particular group. I think anybody on the political spectrum would agree with that. So that's my hope on the regulatory side. On the parent and teacher side, there's always this period of time when a technology arises, and there's this sort of like period of uncertainty, right? As it's growing and we don't understand it, we don't know what it's going to look like in the end, et cetera. And so we're sort of in that period of uncertainty where unfortunately these parents and teachers, it's difficult. I mean, it's like whiplash. You wake up every day and something new is launched and something new has changed, and how do you keep up with it all? I would encourage them, and this is probably an unrealistic encouragement, but I would encourage them to engage in meaningful, open, non-judgmental conversations with their students, with their children, and ask them, how are you using these tools? Teach them to me, right? Learn them yourself, see how they're interacting with them. Investing just a little bit of time in a way that makes the child or the youth feel like they are a peer, educating their parent or educating their teacher on what's happening. You can cut right through the noise. You cut right through all the headlines and all the change. And if the student sits down with you and says, "Let me show you, what's happening," and you're not judging them, you're not, jumping right in, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe you had to write that homework assignment for you," right? You're learning and you're educating them and you're saying, "Hey, that's really great." Also, when I wrote papers, one of the challenges of writing papers was kind of making mistakes and doing it wrong. How are you learning that part of it? I think connecting with the students, connecting with the technology, learning it yourself, using it yourself, go in and pretend you're a kid and try to write a homework assignment for yourself. If you lay out a lesson plan as a teacher, go sign up for ChatGPT, pay the $20 to get the latest version of it, and pretend you're Sally Sue and try to write your own paper to it and see how it functions. A lot of this uncertainty can be cleared up by learning it yourself and spending time with students and your children directly. because at the end of the day, like that's where the source of information is at, and that's where the trust needs to be built. So that as these, it doesn't really matter if it's chaperone or if it's regulatory or whatever, like the relationship between those three groups, the child, the parent, and the teacher, that's where all the magic happens. And so I would encourage everybody to focus on that.
Okay. Great answer. Great answer. And then the last one, Caleb, this might be maybe just, I don't know, maybe you'll look back at this episode years later and then be able to share this, but maybe this might be one of those proud dad moments. So I wanted to ask you, when your kids grow up and they look back at this moment where they say, my dad built Chaperone, built this wonderful app, during this critical time, like I know it's been 4 years, since 2022, going into 2026, since ChatGPT came out. But what do you want them to say, or what do you think they'll say about the choice that their dad made when the world was still trying to figure out AI and children?
Yeah. Yeah, it's a great question. I think if Chaperone is able to in any way nudge this conversation and this industry towards, first of all, letting youth learn rather than having the answers given to them directly, right? Um, so that their critical thinking abilities don't atrophy during this time. It's a critical time. It doesn't take long to sort of pick the cohort of youth that are affected by this right now. It doesn't take long for that cohort to be impacted for life because they had a period of time where everything was being served up to them on a silver platter. If Chaperone can even just nudge that conversation forward, then I think I would be a proud dad, years from now that I was able to, accelerate us towards having safe AI interactions that are educational as well.
Excellent. Caleb, thank you so much. I really appreciate all of your insight. Thank you so much for just really sharing, not just your platform, but sharing your heart. I mean, I think throughout the whole conversation, just picking up on your mission, your vision, it's something that I really truly felt that it does come from the heart, and especially like you said, because of your children, taking care of them. You said, you know what, I want to make sure that other children are taken care of. And I think that speaks volumes of not only you, but the work that you're doing and the mission of Chaperone, and obviously, peace of mind for parents. So I think that is something that is huge. So thank you so much for joining us today here on this conversation. But before we wrap up, I always love to end the show with these last three kind of quick fire questions. So hopefully you're ready to go here. So
Sure.
as
Lay it
we
on me.
know, all right, as we know, every superhero has a pain point or weakness. And for Superman, that kryptonite was what weakened him. So I want to ask you, in the current state of tech or technology, I want to ask you, what would you say is your current edu kryptonite or tech kryptonite, I should say?
Yeah, it's a great. So I would say I'm impatient, right? I see the solution, and in this case, I built it. And I want others to build similar tools as well, and I just want to make an end run to getting this into the hands of the right people, getting this into educators' hands, children's hands, parents' hands. Um, so I would say my biggest weakness right now in this particular point in time is I'm just impatient to get this to the next level, and not just Chaperone, but really this problem as a whole. I'm just impatient for us to sort it out as a society.
Excellent. All right, great answer. Question number 2. If you could have a billboard with anything on it, what would it be and why?
I would say Chaperone, safe AI for children.
Perfect. Excellent. Simple, to the point. I love it. All right. And the last question, Caleb, is if you could trade places with anyone for a single day, who would that be and why?
Oof. You mind if I give you two answers?
Sure, not a problem.
All right. So my first answer would be Fred Rogers, because Mr. Rogers, I think um, he saw the same inflection point that television had. It could be used as a tool for bad or good, and he decided that that new technology, that new tool, could be used for good to help children feel better about themselves, accept themselves, learn. And I just think and honestly, I'd want to be him for a day, because I mean, I don't think I've seen a human being happier than Fred Rogers. So, it just sounds like a phenomenal 24 hours. Um, I think I would take away a lot of philosophical lessons from that experience. And the second answer is I would love to be my 8-year-old son, or potentially my 12-year-old daughter, just for a day, just to see, like, you know, what they really think of this technology, what they really are afraid of or excited about, or I talk to them and I listen, and I assume that I understand, but I would love to just be them for a day and really get my head wrapped around this problem and a lot of other technologies that are coming out, a lot of other things that are changing in their lifetime, and understand how it looks from their perspective.
Excellent. Well, great answers, Caleb. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate the time that we spent together here. This was a very wonderful conversation. And again, thank you so much for all the work that you're doing, through the platform, and just really seeing things in a different light. And I'm all about that. And I'm just thankful that I got to be here today and learn more about your work and Chaperone and what it could do for students. And for all our audience members that are listening to this episode, please make sure that you check out the show notes where we will link Chaperone there. So you can go ahead and definitely check that out. And we will make sure that we also link the best place that you can connect with Caleb. And actually, Caleb, let us know if our audience members would love to contact you. What would be the best way that they might be able to contact you?
Sure. Caleb@chatperone.com. So, and that's CALEB.
Perfect. And we'll make sure we link that in the show notes too as well. So thank you all. I appreciate it. And for our audience members, please make sure you visit our website at myedtech.life, where you can check out this amazing episode and the other 355 episodes. So thank you as always for all of your support. And I promise you in those episodes, you're definitely going to find some knowledge nuggets that you can sprinkle onto what you are already doing great. So please make sure you stop by the website, check out those episodes, and also want to give again a big shout out to our wonderful sponsors. Thank you so much to Book Creator, Eduate, and Peel Back Education for allowing us to bring these amazing conversations into our education space so that we may continue to grow and learn professionally and personally as well. So thank you all for all of your support. And my friends, until next time, don't forget, stay techie.